everyone, and welcome back to this channel again. In today's video, I'm going to talk about FAFI curve. This is going to be the continuation of the video uploaded concerning the blood gas partition coefficient of inhaled anesthetic agents. If you haven't watched that, I highly suggest that you go on that video before coming to this one. So we're going to talk about FAFI curve. Is an important concept in anesthesia. And what does that mean? Why do we even care about this? It's because this curve helps us understand and compare how much and how faster the gas is going to get into the brain comparing to what we have been administering. So before we even jump in the curve, I would like to establish some little things that we need to understand. So when we give gases to our patient, so let's say we are giving fresh gas flow here, the gases are going to go through the vaporizer, where they're going to be mixed with inhaled anesthetic agent. Coming now from the vaporizer, those gases are going to be inhaled by the patient. Inhaled. After inhalation, the gas are going to be found in the alveoli of our patient. Alveoli. And from the alveoli, the gas gets to the brain. So what is Fi here? Fi is the fraction of gas that was inhaled. When the gas leaves from the vaporizer to get into the patient, Fi is going to represent the fraction of gas inhaled, and Fa will represent the fraction of gas that is in the alveoli. And the brain here, the amount of gas in the brain is going to determine the depth of the anesthesia. So how asleep our patient is. So the alveolar fraction have two main determinants that we need to talk about. The first determinant is going to be the rate from the machine to the alveoli, which is going to determine how much concentration we have in the alveoli. So here we're going to say the rate from machine to alveoli. And the second determinant is going to be the rate of transfer from the alveoli to the brain. The rate of transfer from alveoli to the brain. So this is going to be our Fa determinant. Now, before we even go further, I just want to emphasize on something. So we can determine directly the amount of anesthesia of inhalational agent in our brain. So when we give the gas, we don't know directly how much gas we have in the brain, which is this amount that determines the depth of anesthesia, but we can't tell. So we use the Fa as a mirror of what is in the brain. So this is why it's so important to understand this determinant. So here I'm just going to put the pressure, the partial pressure of the gas in the brain is approximately the same amount in the alveoli. So we use this to know what is here. And the brain is the target organ ultimately. So let's talk about the rate from the machine into the alveoli. What are determinants? It's going to be our fresh gas flow. It's going to be our time our delivery time constant of delivery is gonna be our dead space. It's gonna be our alveolar ventilation, and our FRC is also going to play a role. We're going to come back to this. And so these are the determinants from the machine into what gets into the alveoli. And here, this amount here into the alveoli is also going to be defined by the rate that leaves. Is like input minus output. So this amount, the rate of transfer from the alveolar to the brain, is going to be equal to, is going to be subject to cardiac output and the blood gas partition coefficient of our inhaled gas. So now let's talk about each one and our curve. Now the FAFI curve like this. Here I have the time. Here I have the FI. So we're gonna list our gas here first. So we're gonna have dex, nitrous, sevoflurane, isoflurane, enflurane, and halotane. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. This is not perfect, but it's just to illustrate the concept. So this is gonna be our FAFI curve. It is something like that. Like I said earlier, it's this curve that helps you determine how long time it's gonna take for your gases to equilibrate from the brain to what has been inhaled, right? So how long is gonna take for my FA, what is in the brain, to equilibrate with what I've been given, the FI. And this is why you see this plateau, because this is when you see that equilibration. Now, dexflurane, we talked about the blood gas partition coefficient in the last video, but we really need to go over again so we can understand. Dexflurane have low blood partition, the lowest blood partition coefficient 0.43, followed by nitrous 46, then sevo 0.69, iso 1.4, enflurane 1.9, halotane 2.4. And you're gonna see some variation with the numbers slightly different in some books versus other resources, but in general, this is how they are classified. So the gases with the lowest blood gas partition, that means they are not that soluble in blood because it's blood versus gas. So if you have a low blood gas partition, you are not soluble in blood. And you can think about the blood like as a reservoir. The blood is a reservoir that holds those gases down from getting in the brain. So if you have a low blood gas partition, you are not that soluble in the blood, so you get in the brain faster. And even though dexflurane is lower than nitrous, but nitrous oxide is going to get in the brain faster than dex. And we're going to see why. So here we have sevo, iso, influent, and halogen. So when we talk about getting in the brain faster, we're talking about the induction, right? When we first starting the gas, we want to put the patient at sleep. So nitrous oxide gets in the brain faster than dex. So why is this? It's because of what is called the concentrating effect. So the concentrating effect is, let's talk about it right here. For a patient who is not intubated, normally we have more nitrogen in our alveoli. So if this is our alveoli here, we have more nitrogen in here. Nitrogen, nitrogen. And this is our blood here. So when we give nitrous oxide to our patient, nitrous oxide is 34 times more soluble than nitrogen. So this nitrous oxide getting into our alveoli, filling our alveoli, building that pressure gradient inside the alveoli, is going to rapidly diffuse here in the blood because it's 34 times more soluble than nitrogen. So after this rapid diffusion, what is going to happen to the alveoli? The size of the alveoli is going to shrink because all this nitrogen that came here increasing this alveolar size just left and build and go to the blood. So we have a shrink. So we have a decrease in the volume of our alveoli. And because we have a decrease in the volume, so the gases here seems to have a high pressure, right? A high partial pressure because the size of the alveoli have decreased. And because that pressure builds, it helps the gas goes faster in the brain. So remember, you don't give nitrous oxide alone as an inhalational agent. You have to mix it with other gases. Let's say you are mixing with SIVO, so your concentration of SIVO is going to be higher in the alveoli. Building that pressure is going to help the gas get quicker in the brain. So this is the reason why nitrous oxide gets in the brain faster than dex, even though his blood gas coefficient is higher than dex. So because once it gets here, shrinking of the alveoli, more pressure, and it gets into the brain faster. Now this is just temporarily because as you keep giving your gas, the pressures are going to be restored, and your FA, the partial pressure in your alveoli, is going to be restored. And so this is just temporary at the beginning. All right, now that we have that down, let's recap our video and see how these factors impact our FAFI curve over time. If I have a high fresh gas flow, I'm increasing the amount of gas in the alveoli and building that pressure, and ultimately that's going to be reflected in the brain. Remember, the fraction in the alveoli give us a reflection of what is happening in the brain. So if I want to increase my FI equals speeding the induction, I have to work on this determinant. So I'm going to increase my fresh gas flow. The more I have the flow here, the more I'm building that pressure into my alveoli, and the more it's going to get in the brain. I need to have a slow time constant delivery. This just means that I'm giving time for my alveoli to get saturated by my inhaled gas. So this is why I need to have a slow time constant delivery. The dead space, I need to reduce the dead space. Like if I have a bunch of monitor connected to my ET tube, I'm increasing my dead space. And remember, the dead space is that portion of your space that does not participate in your gas exchange, is ventilation without perfusion. And if that gas does not participate, it does not get in the blood to get in the brain. So I need to reduce my dead space. Decrease dead space. Alveolar ventilation is just like fresh gas flow. If I increase my alveolar ventilation, I increase the rate of the gas getting into the brain, and I increase also my portion of the gas that will get into the brain. Remember, the alveolar ventilation equal tidal volume minus the dead space times the respiratory rate. So if I increase my alveolar ventilation, I'm decreasing ultimately my dead space. More gas gets into the alveoli, increasing that partial pressure, ultimately getting into the brain. So I need to increase my alveolar ventilation. Now let's talk about FRC. FRC is your residual volume of gas, that is left in your lung after a normal tidal volume. So if here I have my normal tidal volume here, I have my inspiratory residual capacity, expiratory residual capacity, and residual volume. These two are my functional residual capacity, right? And my total lung capacity is gonna be my functional residual capacity plus my tidal volume plus my IRC, my inspiratory residual capacity volume. So if my FRC is decreased, I have no other choices than increasing my tidal volume. And if I increase my tidal volume, I'm increasing the amount of gas building into my alveoli, right? I'm supporting my ventilation. So this is why I want to have a low FRC right here. So we want to have a low FRC. Now, let's talk about the rate of transfer from the alveolar to the brain. If I want to play on this determinant to increase my rise, to speed up my induction, I need a low cardiac output. Remember, the blood acts as a reservoir to hold those gases down. So if I have less cardiac output, I have less of that blood that is gonna hold my gases down from getting into the brain, so my gas get into the brain faster. So I need to have a low cardiac output to speed up my FAFI rise curve, thus speeding my induction. And also I need a low blood gas partition coefficient. Why? Because if you are less soluble, you don't have time. You are not soluble in the blood, so you are not hanging around the blood rather than getting into the brain. So your speed is faster. And we saw why, even though nitrous has a low blood gas partition coefficient, even though nitrous oxide have a higher partition coefficient than Dex, is still getting faster because of the concentrating effect, shrinking those alveoli, and the partial pressure builds up. So this is the determinant that we can work on to increase the speed of our induction of the inhalational agent. So if you like this video, please like, subscribe, and don't forget to push the notification button to see my next video. If you have something to add or ask or subtract, please write down the comment below, and see you on my next video.